done, and that's why I didn't try it.
Yep.
That makes sense. The Wi-Fi's down here.
Okay. For those of you at home, sorry about that. We dropped the connection, and we're back now. I think it was a Wi-Fi problem, and I got off the Wi-Fi and I'm just on cellular, so hopefully that will work.
You know, we talk about the virgin birth, and we talk about what Catholics believe about it. You have all of this stuff going on in debate and discussion. But you know, in my own personal journey, I came to a point that I was convicted of my need for Jesus to be my Lord and to trust Him as my Savior. I knew absolutely nothing about the virgin birth when that happened.
You don't have to know, you believe in or know about the virgin birth to believe in Jesus,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Isn't it a little ridiculous to think of Christ as totally, fully human, but Mary, whom we think of as lesser than Christ, is totally pure, never sullied in any way?
Yeah, so this, the never sullied is the correct description here, right? It is this idealized, romanticized version of purity. And y'all, this just runs through history, and we've had so much of it in the late 20th century in the evangelical church, and it didn't come out of nowhere, right? It didn't come out of nowhere. So that's all we'll say about that, because it seems like y'all talked about that plenty last week.
I have one, and this may seem far-fetched, but again, coming out of the Puritan era, maybe they won't, through this belief the Catholic Church in Mary, never known a man, are they trying to say she never had the joy of sex? That might be, in their eyes, sinful?
Oh, well, yeah, no, it is. Well, there's two or three things going on here. One is sex is carnal, not spiritual. The other thing that's happening is in their view, in order to maintain the uniqueness of Jesus as being born of the Spirit, they've got to maintain Mary's virginity afterward to prove that indeed this was a miracle. Which, I'm sorry, that's sort of backward, right? You're reverse engineering something at that point, in my view. But this is a very common Catholic view and teaching. And again, I think this is a bigger theological issue than infant baptism, even. What we believe about Mary. Okay, so let's move on. The next line, after having been conceived by the Holy Spirit, born of the Virgin Mary, and again, let me just emphasize here, the biblical text does not use the word virgin. This is an interpretation. And even when you go straight to the text, in a lot of our English translations, the word virgin appears, and it's choice that's made by editors. Okay? That could be a whole series we could go down. Now, in the Nicene Creed, after being born of the Virgin Mary, it says, and was made man. And was made, became, was made to be a man. The Apostles' Creed does not talk about that part. It goes straight from the birth of Jesus to the crucifixion. I mean, you talk about concise. I mean, the Apostles' Creed is squeezing this in here. So there's nothing in here in the Apostles' Creed about Jesus' life and ministry. It goes straight from birth to death. And this is one of the most common, most accepted creeds in all of Christendom. And how do we ignore the life of Jesus? I think this is a real problem. And it reminds me of a current event. Those of you who are educators or have kids in school right now in Texas have gone back to classrooms with the Ten Commandments posted in them while that's being litigated. And all this new set of rules on things that teachers and substitutes cannot do in the classroom, cannot even put a Band-Aid on a kid without permission from the parent.
What's that about?
You cannot put a Band-Aid on a kid unless the parent has signed a permission that you can do that.
Like every time the kid stubs its toe and gets
Anytime,
Band-Aid.
anything. You cannot treat the child in any way without permission. This is Texas law now.
Even if there's blood flowing, which they
Maybe there's a
stop
provision for, gushing blood. I don't know.
sports. I mean, they stop sports now.
Yeah, no, this is how insane things have gotten in the Texas legislature, y'all. We've lost the plot, right? Like taking care of kids, educating, no. It's very, very difficult. And those of you who've been educated, one of the downsides to this is so many people are leaving teaching right now because they're not going to put up with it, right? And I know we have a lot of former teachers in the class and in the network here. Learned a horrifying story this week from our next door neighbor at Moss Haven, where their kids go. No, this is Forest Meadow, where a female student who wears a turban, a traditional head covering of some sort, the student couldn't find what they were supposed to turn in or something. And the teacher, y'all, this is at Forest Meadow Middle School, in exasperation with the girl not doing what she'd been asked, says to her in front of the entire class, "Do you even speak English?" Well, you can imagine that didn't go down so well. What have we come to, y'all? Again, we've lost the plot on the thing. And one of my beefs with the Apostles' Creed is it loses the plot on the life and ministry of Jesus. It's not sufficient to describe the life and ministry of Jesus, which is the thing that matters most. Yes, it's important that Jesus was born. Yes, it's important that Jesus died. But what did Jesus do while he was on earth? That matters too.
Isn't that what's going on right now? We, in politics, in life, and as we do everything, we acknowledge Christ, we acknowledge religion, we acknowledge all this, and we say, yes, Jesus is our Savior. Yes, but anything he did, how he lived, all of his principles, all of his tenets, they're all dropped aside when it comes to how to live.
That's right.
How to live in society.
Right. Yeah, no, Jim, you're exactly right. This is what's missing from so much of Christianity, particularly as it relates to culture and politics today, because it's been stripped down, right? And anyhow, yes.
So what we do, instead of talking about the life of Christ, we post the Ten Commandments, which doesn't even list the commandments that Christ said as the second and greatest.
Right.
Was to
Exactly.
love your neighbor as yourself. Or John 3:16.
Or the Beatitudes.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the Beatitudes on the classroom wall than the Ten Commandments.
Yes.
And you remember, there was a certain evangelical said, I do not want anyone to rule the world, to our president, to have anyone who agrees to run the country by the Beatitudes.
Yeah, because you don't want to emulate the life of Christ. Donna?
That's right.
So, tell us the context again of the Apostles' Creed.
Yeah.
And why do you think in that historical context they would leave that life and ministry of Jesus out of the creed?
Okay, so the question is, why in crafting the Apostles' Creed would you leave the life and ministry of Jesus out? So all I can do is speculate.
Yeah.
And the best speculation I can offer is that was so understood at that point that it didn't need to be said. This was the message that was present to everyone, and the framework of the Apostles' Creed was just really the bare bones of God's intervening work in the world, right? And I mean, that's all I can come up with, right?
Also gone from the Nicene Creed too, right?
Well, yeah, no, it's also not in the Nicene Creed. None of this. And the purpose of the creeds are really to explain who God is and who Jesus is more than what they have done. Because by the same token, neither creed talks about God's work in the world in the Old Testament, right? There's no mention of Moses and the deliverance and, Adam and Eve and all those things. None of that's there either. So again, it's really, really stripped down on this. But the point I'm trying to make is you can recite the Apostles' Creed every day and still not know about Jesus. And that's what seems important to me, because we've lost the plot on Jesus. And again, WWJD. It's pretty simple, right? What would Jesus do? And not these things that Christianity has become to be about. Y'all, you like it's easy to get despondent over the state of the church and what this has become politically, and how people have forgotten these very things. This is why I think there's as excuse me, as nice as the Apostles' Creed is, there are limitations to it, and it's not all you need.
You say we've forgotten it. I don't think we've forgotten it. We just have chosen not to
Well, people are ignoring it.
ignore it.
Yeah.
It's been said. Let's not rule by it, by any Jesus' teachings, because he says to forgive. He says
Yeah.
to accept people.
And that makes you weak.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Waters down your faith.
And yet, the ones who are saying that are the evangelicals.
Right. So we go, I just want to let you know we're skipping a whole lot of the Bible here,
Okay?
right? So we go from born of the Virgin Mary to being crucified. And I'm looking ahead to see what I forgot here, because there's a note on my thing and I can't find the asterisk. Okay. Crucified. Where's that asterisk? So, where do we find the biblical text for crucifixion? It's everywhere in the New Testament. That's just not even something that we really have to contend with. It's in every one of the Gospels. It's in Romans. It's in Corinthians. There's a lot of reference to Jesus being crucified. The Nicene Creed says, and was crucified also for us. Apostles' Creed doesn't add the for us, just was crucified. But what's interesting in both creeds is they go on to say, under Pontius Pilate. And the question I think we have to ask is, why does that matter? Why, given all the other things you're leaving out, why does it matter to include in the creed the name of Pontius Pilate? Any thoughts?
Is it the connection with Rome?
Yeah, it's the Roman Empire.
The Catholic Church?
Well, for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, and this ought to be a warning to us, y'all. Jesus was crucified by the governing empire. It's crazy for Christians to get in bed with the governing empire, because that never works out so well. Never. So I had a call yesterday from a member of our church who's very active on the advocacy scene, on the advocacy team. And I've got to write a story this afternoon in the second special session of the Texas legislature that's happening this week. There's a bill still coming through that started in the regular session as Senate Bill 6 that has to do with outlawing the use of the two abortion medication combinations. And what this person was telling me is, unbeknownst to most people, the authors have slipped in some additional language that would nullify the Texas version of the Religious Freedom Restoration Act, called RFRA, for anything having to do with abortion. Which is a way of saying, when it comes to talking about abortion in Texas, you may not appeal to your religious beliefs. And you might say, well, that's good because, you know, so much of the anti-abortion rhetoric is based on a religious belief. But that's not why it's there. It's there because one of the great defenses against all the anti-abortion legislation that's come forward is there are people who say, and Jews among them, who say, but my religious belief includes accommodation under certain circumstances. And what this bill would do is wipe away that ability to protest based on your religious beliefs, while other people's religious beliefs rule the day. That's empire, y'all. Jesus was crucified by the Roman Empire under Pontius Pilate. And Pontius Pilate not only represents the Roman Empire, he represents the accommodation of the Jewish establishment to the Roman Empire. Because remember, in this time, in order to keep the peace, the Jewish leaders had worked out sort of a deal with the Roman Empire where they got to keep their power as long as they were submissive to the empire. Does that sound familiar to anyone today? The quest for control and power leads us into alliances where we shouldn't be with empire. And so this mention of Pontius Pilate is says so much more than just saying the words, right? The fact that Jesus was crucified was because of the Roman Empire. Now, again, I'm not going to take us down the rabbit hole of atonement theories and crucifixion theories. We've done that before, and that's like a whole series of lessons, the ways we might think about this. But the thing we all agree on in Christendom is that Jesus was indeed crucified by the Roman Empire. How that worked, what it means about the atonement, that's a whole other conversation. But there is really no dispute about the crucifixion happening. Comments, thoughts on that?
I always thought it was the Sanhedrin or the Pharisees, or it was the Jewish leadership that crucified Christ.
Well, not technically. They started it.
Yeah.
But they did not have the authority to conduct a crucifixion.
And they were given the option to say, well, we are going to allow somebody to not be crucified.
They could have chosen Barabbas.
And they could have chosen Barabbas.
Right.
From Henry, Pontius Pilate's famous comment that is appearing today in our political discourse: what is truth?
Yeah, I've written about this so much. It's that Henry's right. That's what is truth. And Pilate gets the line, and this is how he accommodates, right? This is how he accommodates doing what he's doing that he knows is wrong. Sound familiar to anyone today, right? This is how so many politicians and preachers are accommodating themselves today to things they know in their heart are wrong. And yet here we are. So Pontius Pilate is a name inscribed in history as someone who did the wrong thing for the wrong reason. Jim?
I was kind of wondering, in Rome at the time, in the Roman Empire, that Pontius Pilate was under, was ruling, weren't they very open to all the different religions, and they worshiped so many things, and they had Dionysus and
Right.
all those. Why would worship of Jesus be any threat to them?
Because it was
Just
exclusive.
another God.
Because it was exclusive. The Jewish belief, as Christian belief, is not monogamous, monotheistic.
Back to the virgin.
Yeah, monotheistic. And the very exclusive nature of it, right, is threatening because you cannot accommodate other religions in that belief, right?
So they wanted to be able to say, well, we're all okay.
That's right.
But you're coming in, Jesus saying,
Right.
all the others,
Right.
y'all are all wrong.
Well, this is the beef Christianity. Yeah, this is the beef Christianity and Judaism, and to an extent Islam have, or others have with these religions because they are monotheistic, and they do not, accommodate other religious beliefs as being on the same level as theirs.
But in this case, they are multi-theistic.
Yes.
They just don't want anyone saying, I am the only one, and y'all have all the others.
That's right.
So everybody else is wrong.
Right.
Except for us.
Right. And you can extrapolate that into so many applications. But again, today we also live in a secular culture. And there are those who want it to be a theistic culture. And these are the people who ought to scare the holy hell out of you right now, because they want you to adhere to their religious belief politically, culturally, in every way. And, one of these guys has really been in the news this week because of a CNN interview, a pastor from Idaho named Doug Wilson, who leads a church that is bonkers out there. And this is a guy who does not believe women should vote. Right? He does not believe women should work outside the home. He believes women should be submissive. I mean, he is way out there. And y'all, Pete Hegseth goes to a church in his network and admires him and retweets him. So that you can see why exclusivity gets a bad name. Donna?
He also says, I've read an article, this pastor out there says that slavery was not wrong in certain contexts.
Oh, that's right. He does say that.
Slaveholders were really compassionate to the slaves.
Yeah. Yes.
Crazy.
Which y'all would think that's an outlier opinion, but it is not.
No, it isn't.
Not in those circles. Okay? Not in the far right, religious right circles. And again, it's all a whole cloth.
But in the not voting thing for women, he's saying because the family needs to come together and decide who to be voting for, and then the father, the man, will go forth and place that family vote.
Based on what he thinks.
Based on what he thinks, on what the
Allegedly, he's taken their input.
Yes.
Right.
He is supposed to be.
But now, J.D. Vance has a variation on this where he thinks fathers who have children should get more votes. You should get votes based upon the number of children you have. Right, Jim? Were you going to say something?
Well, going back in church history, how is it that in forming the Apostles' Creed, the Forum people, how did they excuse leaving Christ's ministry and the teachings of Jesus out of the creed?
Yeah, I don't know. And again, the Apostles' Creed happened, whereas the Nicene Creed happened at a church council. The Apostles' Creed just sort of happened.
Which came first?
The Apostles' Creed. And it just sort of emerged, right? So it was not the product of a church council. But then you'd have to ask the question of the Nicene Creed. If you're having this big church council and this is your thing, also, why are you leaving this out? Right? That is a great question for a systematic theologian smarter than me. I know a couple, I'll ask them this week. I'll report back to you next week. Okay. He was crucified under Pontius Pilate, suffered, died, and was buried. I want to spend our last few minutes of today's lesson on this word, suffered. Which is in both the Apostles' Creed and the Nicene Creed. Why does it matter that Jesus suffered?
It doesn't say it in the Apostles.
What does yours say?
He's crucified, died, and buried.
Oh, so it's in some versions, but not in others.
I mean, they can't even agree.
Oh, yeah. Y'all just ought to throw away that sheet I gave you. It's worthless.
Okay.
So he's human. He's more.
Yeah. So,
He's human.
right.
He had suffered. He's spiritual.
So part of the reason this matters, again, goes to your atonement theory. Because those who really like to think about bloody Jesus, they need to know he suffered. Because in their view, it was the wrath of God that fell on Jesus. And therefore, it's got to be painful. Back when I was in seminary, in the Dark Ages, before the pre-Dark Ages when some of y'all were there, there was a well-known professor at Southwestern who had this whole shtick where he'd go out and speak in churches about the pain and agony of the crucifixion. He had researched all this, and people just loved for him to come and tell all the agonizing details of what it was like to be crucified. I mean, it's a kind of pain voyeurism, really, because it somehow makes them feel better about themselves to know how painful the crucifixion was. And I mean, this guy would go in graphic detail about everything he had done, wrote books about it, had, seminars and all these things, and had a real big following. And I always thought it was sort of creepy. It's I'm sorry, that's weird.
Well, we always wonder why the Catholics have these terrible things hanging over their beds, for God's sake, and
Right, so you have bloody Jesus.
and
Right.
They're not in our churches at all, and so that's an extreme difference.
Oh, yeah. So I may have told you all this story before. My friend, may he rest in peace, died a couple of years ago. A friend from Albuquerque who was born and raised Catholic in New Mexico. When Allison and I got married 40 years ago this summer, he knew I was going to seminary. And for a wedding present, he gave us, it's a wooden block carved like an open Bible. And on one side is a clock, right? And on the other side is decoupaged bloody Jesus on the cross. That was his wedding present to us.
You mean like it had red on it?
Oh, yeah, no, it was bloody. Yeah, yeah.
And you have probably just put it in place in your home.
Well, I lost track. We kept it in the original packaging the whole time. And it made several Christmas white elephant gift exchanges, where it was very, very popular, particularly among the seminary crowd originally. We ended up with it. We kept it. We finally lost it, I think, when we lived in Atlanta.
And he was serious, right?
Oh, he was dead serious. Because in his view, that was something very appropriate for us. In that there was nothing comedic about it. It was utterly sincere, right? And so much more I can say about that. That won't help. But this idea of Jesus suffering, does it matter? Jesus died. Jesus was resurrected.
That was a very strong draw for high school kids, I know. junior high and we were all pushed on, look what he did for you.
Right.
He did this, he did that, and you'd sing, when I survey, see from.
Well, it's like the last night of youth camp.
And, yeah, he did all this for you, so come forward.
Yeah. So a friend of mine who watched me some, a woman named Kara Meredith, has a new book out called Church Camp. And one of her theories, she worked in camps for like 20 years. One of her theories about church youth camp, not so much true at Wilshire, but in a lot of places, the general formula is there's a 7-day series of talks that happen just like clockwork in almost any evangelical camp. And the last one is this very thing, the pain and suffering of Jesus for you, right? Because it is very emotional, right? But the inclusion of this in the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed, means, this is not a new invention, y'all. People have been, where are there all these relics out there as well?
And what makes this wrong?
Oh, so what makes it wrong?
What he did for us.
Okay. So I would say on its face, it's not wrong. But if your entire theology of salvation is based upon God's wrath on Jesus, I think we got something to talk about, because I do not believe that God purposely punished Jesus. Now we're off. That's a whole nother atonement theory. We could go down that rabbit hole. So there's a very popular song that's sung in a lot of churches these days called In Christ Alone. And you've probably heard it somewhere. In the second or third verse, there's a line that prevents it from being sung here and other places that says, in Jesus' death, the wrath of God was satisfied. And the people who hold the copyright to that will not let you change it.
If you understand what crucifixion is in itself, why would you find it necessary to pile the wrath of God on top of it?
Because some people just love to get down in the gory details. And they love to feel horrible about themselves. I mean, it's the same thing. Why do people watch, gory true crime movies? Right?
Detectives.
I've often heard, and it is true, Catholicism, Catholics, so forth, they, in their crosses, they always have the crucifix. Jesus is always on the cross.
Right.
Protestantism, the cross is
Empty, yes.
And that's a huge difference.
Right. Yeah, no, it is a huge difference. Trish.
When the movie The Passion came out, I went to see it. I left absolutely sobbing. And my point was, I know there was a crucifixion. I don't want to watch the crucifixion. We know people get raped, but I don't want to see a movie where somebody rapes somebody. But the point, and I felt really guilty because I thought, you're not getting the crucifixion, Trish. You really aren't. You're seeing this empty cross. The eggs come. Thank goodness he got raised. Thank you.
Right.
But you didn't see the crucifixion. And I've never done that. And I feel like a certain amount of guilt. Like, I think I missed the point, really. I wonder if we're missing the point because we love, and I know here you do Thursday. We never did Thursday and Friday at
Right.
the church. We never had that stuff. And I haven't gone here either because I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. So I think maybe we glossed it over a little bit in our little Bible, Baptist church.
Well, yeah,
Didn't
so-
deal on the crucifixion.
Right. So I think you can err on both sides. You can get on the ditch on either side of the road.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. I mean, to your point, crucifixion's horrible. You understand that. That's the nature of what it is. And it was cruel. It was awful. But to my view, when you need to dwell on the awfulness of it in order to make your theological point, you sort of miss the boat.
I wouldn't want to see it on my bed every night. I mean, sorry.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, here's one thing with that. when you see that every day, you become numb to it, right? And it makes it less, right? All right, one last comment and we're out of time.
Well, I was just going to throw a few things out. I don't remember how the case of Christ talks about the crucifixion. I can't remember.
The Lee Strobel book?
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Galton Ministries, going back to what you said
Yeah.
earlier about the beliefs, we went to one of those, and it's very evident of what they believe and what they want you to believe.
Right.
If you go to, especially the Church of Christ, if you go to look at the baptismal robes, they're all for young kids. They have very few for adults. So that's telling you that you're missing something because you don't have any adult conversions. You've got people in the Church of Christ converting at a young age because they were given this cross thing, and you will guilt trip into accepting. And another book is Accommodation by the Racial Condition Dallas.
Yeah, The Accommodation.
In the 50s and 60s.
Right.
And that's a great book to read.
Right. I started to mention that earlier when I was talking about comedy.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's the bottom line. We're going to leave us off today. The Apostles' Creed. Jesus died. Jesus was crucified. We're going to get to died next week. Died and buried. Yeah. To me, the most important thing we've talked about today is remembering that neither of these creeds talks about the life and ministry of Jesus. The thing I walk away from scratching my head is why. Why is that way? So you can ponder that this week, and we'll pick up with the next part next week. Glad to be back with you all. Let me lead us in a prayer, and then Charlene will come with our prayer concerns. Grant us your grace, Lord, as we need your peace today. Guide our words and our thoughts to be the correct ones and the ones that bring joy and hope to others. We pray through Jesus Christ. Amen.
It is good to have